Welcome to Our Voices. It's the end of the year and we are glad that you are with us. Is there a single word that can describe the year 2018 across all of Africa? We're here at Our Voices. We're calling it the year of the unexpected, and we're going to take a look at some of the most surprising moments of the year. Hello, I'm Orion Itangishak.
And I am Hadiza Kiari.
I'm Ayan Bior.
And I'm Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick. Speaking of surprises, this happened. I have no voice and I'm on a show called Our Voices. So please bear with me. You know, this really has been a year of surprises in many ways. Do you think all of the events we've seen have really been unexpected?
Well, I think unexpected is the perfect term to describe what happened in Ethiopia. I mean, we saw a young reformist prime minister come in and really shake things up. Political prisoners were freed. A peace was mended between Ethiopia and Eritrea, and women were appointed to top ministerial positions, including the defense minister. Ethiopia is now the only country after Rwanda to have equal representation, gender representation in their cabinet. And this all happened in 1 year. Ethiopia, the country of my birth, still continues to give me life. So I love that about this year. On the entertainment side, how incredible was Black Panther? I mean, it was the most talked about movie of the year. And it was really unexpected for me to see people, you know, really admire our culture and in the way that they did. So
Absolutely. I watched that movie.
Oh, I watched it like 10 times. But, you know, for that I say Wakanda forever.
Definitely, Ayan, Wakanda forever. That movie made impact globally, and you know, it was awesome. And for me, the continent of Africa in 2018, I saw political progress as well as economic opportunities. I mean, let's look at the new highway in the sky that was made in East Africa.
Yeah.
Kenya had its first direct flight to New York, and that's really was really a big historical moment for East Africa. You know,
It was a big deal.
It was a big deal because, I mean, the East Africa community has 6 countries in that regional bloc, and they're going to really benefit from the economic growth that's going to come from that, because, I mean, it's a flight that's been, for 35 years, U.S. airline as well as Kenyan airline hadn't been able to secure that route. And, you know, you can fly from South Africa directly to the U.S., you can fly from West Africa, and now you can fly from East Africa directly. And so that's
and it also changes the way we're flying inside the continent.
That's right.
No longer
communicate with one another.
We're getting close to the point where we don't have to fly through the Middle East or Europe to get from one point to the other in Africa.
It was really an amazing moment for the continent, and especially for seeing another African flight directly to the U.S. I mean, it was a very historical moment for not just Kenya, but like I said, the other 6 countries of the East Africa community. The flight was on October 28th. It was amazing to see, you know, land at JFK, so congratulations to Kenya.
Yeah. That's right, Orion. However, in Nigeria, the youth certainly made their mark as a force to reckon with when they came up with the initiative of Not Too Young to Run bill, which reduces the age requirement for youth to run for elected offices. So in the past, you would have to be 40 and up in order for you to run for presidency. However, with the new bill, you would have to just be 35. You know, it's a big deal. It's also worth mentioning that the bill was conceived by a group of activists known as YAGA. YAGA means Youth Initiative for Advocacy, Growth and Advancement. And it is a youth non-governmental organization that promotes democratic governance, human rights, and youth inclusion in politics. It is headed by Samson Itodo. It eventually got passed in May of 2016. You know, I mean, what's interesting about this group is the fact that they started off in 2007 as just a student association in the University of Jos in Nigeria. So kudos to Yaga.
Great. You know, in my region, it was really about those days we thought we'd never see. In my hometown of Cape Town, South Africa, we had a water crisis unlike anything other we have seen. You know, people were lining up waiting for water in a city, in a province that has more than 1,000 kilometers of coastline. People were going around
surrounded by water.
Right, people were going around donating water to one another. That certainly made us really rethink our relationship with water. And you know, we grew up so used to clean drinking water. It was a source of pride that this is in Africa, but we can drink from the taps. And that changed for us. And I think it changed, it made us see how urbanization, how population growth and climate change can really upset that balance between water use and water supply, and shone the spotlight on something which we see in other parts of Africa, other major African cities as well.
Absolutely. It's a continental issue. I mean, I was just in Nairobi and 2 of my friends were complaining that they didn't have any water in their house because it had not been replenished.
Right, ask people in Accra, in Lagos, they're seeing the same. So I think that was really a moment I never thought I would see. But then there were also major shifts in leadership, politically speaking, in Southern Africa, in Zimbabwe.
That's right.
First election without Robert Mugabe. We never thought we'd see it in his lifetime, at least. And also new presidents in Angola, Botswana, and South Africa. You know, on the bright side, presidents were stepping down. That, first of all, is something that we really should... Yeah, that is great. Some stepped down because of term limits. Others, as in the case of my country, because they had lost confidence in him because of allegations of corruption, yet again. I just wish that we would see more leadership change at the ballot box and not see leaders changing inside these old liberation movements. And I think that still speaks about the maturation of democracy in my part of the country, but of the continent. I also think the deaths of Winnie Madikizela Mandela, South Africa's Winnie Madikizela Mandela, and the former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan. That was really unexpected. And to me, really was kind of the end of an era because we saw these like great African icons no longer with us, and I don't think we're going to see the likes of them anytime soon.
That's right. If I can squeeze in maturation, I mean, we saw it in Central Africa when President Kabila stepped down. He decided to step down. So that's really, the region is really hopeful that this is a sign of a peaceful political transition of power that we haven't seen in quite some time in that country.
That's right. So there's a lot to talk about. And so what do you think the most unexpected moments were in 2018? Tell us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Use the handle @VOA Our Voices. We've got videos and updates for you there. And share our post with your friends and followers.
Also, don't forget to use the hashtag VOA Our Voices.
We are on WhatsApp too. Send us your messages and videos. Our number is US country code +1 304 506 3638. So reach out to us and add your voice to this discussion.
Well, in some places, 2018 was full of surprises. In other parts, it was more of the same. And here's a look at the year's highs and lows.
Ethiopia saw an unprecedented political change in 2018, says Reuben Brigady, former U.S. ambassador to the African Union.
The historic decision of former Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn to voluntarily relinquish power is something that's never happened in Ethiopian history before. It paved the way for the entree of the current Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy Ahmed, who has made a series of incredible political reforms, the release of political prisoners, to leading the effort to appoint the first female president in Ethiopia's history.
The second most populous country in Africa also made peace with its neighbor Eritrea after 20 years of hostility. But nearly 1 million people have been displaced in southern Ethiopia since clashes erupted there in April, according to UN agencies. In Zimbabwe, the forced resignation of President Robert Mugabe in late 2017 paved the way for elections this year. Ken Apollo, assistant professor of African politics at Georgetown University.
It wasn't democratic, but it was a transition, and I think any transition is better than no transition, especially if it's done constitutionally, which ZANU-PF jumped through a lot of hoops to make it look like it was a democratic transition.
The elections were won by President Emerson Mnangagwa, a longtime ally of Mugabe, making some wonder if this was a real transition from the old guard.
I think, as we're seeing in Mozambique and Angola, any transition is good because the new set of rulers typically want to, be their own men and women. And so they'll implement reforms like you're seeing in Angola that may not always go well with the previous regime.
As the year draws to an end, attention turns to the Democratic Republic of Congo and a recent fire that destroyed 80% of the voting machines in the capital, Kinshasa. Corneille Nangaa, president of the country's electoral commission, Senai, says they are prepared.
The
voting machines were brought back to Kinshasa. They were brought from the interior of the country to Kinshasa. The ballots that we are expecting on Saturday did arrive on Saturday.
Nous avons dans le coup entamé les préparatifs de ces bulletins.
We have started to prepare the ballots, which is nothing more than printing the codes on each ballot to personalize them for each district.
Pour les personnaliser au niveau de chaque circonscription.
Despite the postponement, Michael E. O'Hanlon of the Brookings Institution in Washington remains hopeful in the upcoming vote in DRC.
If those go passably well, I think this is a huge boost forward, because that will be combined, as I see it, with, not so bad trends in Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania.
While trends for democracy are encouraging, countries like Congo, Brazzaville, Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, Uganda, and Sudan are home to some of the longest-serving presidents in Africa. In the case of Equatorial Guinea's president, Theodoro Obiang Bosongo, 2019 will mark his 40th year in power. Deirdre Murray McIntosh, VOA News, Washington.
It's time for a break, but we have a lot to talk about when we come back. We'll dive deeper into the impacts of 2018's events, into social movements that came out of them.
But first, we want to remind you that you are the fifth person on this panel, and it's time for your voices to be heard. Here's what some of you had to say about 2018.
For me, it's the death of Winnie Madikizela Mandela, more fondly known as Mam Winnie. She was just this extraordinary, resilient woman, a hero and trailblazer in her own right. And it was just amazing to see after her death the masses of women donning their head wraps in memory of her, and it subsequently sparked this phrase, "She didn't die, she multiplied." And one can see that in the huge following of women just rising up and just walking in their own strength and trying to take a leaf out of Mam Winnie's book. So definitely her passing, that would be it for me.
The DRC election were a long time coming since 2016, but still unexpected for me, because I think the government just doesn't have the will to organize election. We need to see change in this country, and unfortunately during the election process, the election campaign last week, we have seen, people killed, people arrested, candidates from the opposition side who are not able to campaign freely, and this is unacceptable. I think we need election, and the government have to understand that this is a right.
We are already seeing the women already in politics, how they are being treated. One of the recent ones was the one right in the chamber of the Senate, how another member of the Senate humiliated a female senator. The way he spoke, the way he demeaned her, showed how other politicians look at women. I think it's really humiliating for women, and it's really a disgrace for the male politicians, because they are actually showing how they regard the women.
Like Voice of America on Facebook. Follow VOA on Twitter. Join VOA on our YouTube channel. Like, follow, join VOA.
Welcome back. This is Our Voices, and we're talking about 2018, the year of the unexpected, and the impact these events have had across the continent, from Ethiopia to Zimbabwe, the DRC, and yes, even Wakanda. I mentioned Black Panther before, and I have to say I'm still in awe of the way this movie reintroduced Africa to the entire globe. Right. Take a look at one of my favorite scenes where Black Panther's little sister has to help him catch a bad guy.
Sorry!
Remote driving system activated.
Wait! Which side of the road is it?
For God's sake, just drive.
Okay, calm down. Woo! Let's go! Hey, look at your suit. You've been taking bullets, charging it up with kinetic energy.
Put around the truck. go!
Show off.
Wow, you know, I still get chills when I see scenes from this movie. And one of my favorite scenes is when Killmonger goes back to Wakanda and the village elders demand him to introduce himself. And he doesn't just tell them his name, he tells them his entire lineage. And that really resonated with me because that's what we do as well in my culture. As you guys know, my name is Ayen Deng Byor, and that means that I am Ayen, the daughter of Deng from the House of Byor. So to see a character in Black Panther introduce themselves the way that I introduce myself really, really touched me. And the other thing that I loved is when I went to the movies, you know, on opening weekend, and I saw people in African attire just completely decked out and, you know, really just loving the culture. They had head wraps. I was just moved. And yeah, so Black Panther for me, you guys, I will be saying Wakanda forever for the rest of my life.
Well, yeah, we talked about the global impact earlier, but just seeing what happened outside of the movie as well and the impact that it had on people as well. And speaking of impacts and how clothing and attire can really create a movement, we also saw what we call the Duk movement after the death of Winnie Madikizela Mandela in South Africa. You can take a look at some of these images of South African women and men donning the Duk. Now, a Duk is the Afrikaans word for a head wrap. And of course, we know that Winnie Madikizela Mandela was famous for that head wrap. And so we had on social media women and men posting selfies of themselves.
Men too.
Looking just like Winnie Madikizela Mandela, saying Ma Winnie, as we call her in South Africa. She didn't die, she multiplied.
I love that.
And so, you know, they were using the hashtag All Black with a Duk. And that was something really powerful and very empowering to see. Something else that was very empowering is sort of part of social movements that we saw in South Africa. And let me tell you, they don't call South Africa the protest capital of the world for nothing. Women took to the streets, and thousands of women, not just in the country, but really around the region, took to the streets in what we call the total shutdown movement. This was in protest against gender-based violence in South Africa. You'll know that my home country has some of the highest rates of sexual violence against women in the world. It is really a very scary and shameful number. And so we had these women come out and saying, we're going to not just shut down the city, but we're going to shut down this violence against women, saying, you know, our bodies are not your crimes. And really, these were powerful, powerful images. But this movement got the governments to listen, got even the president. Protesters wanted a summit on gender-based violence, and guess what had happened? They brought all government ministers, including the president, who sat there and listened to survivors' accounts of their ordeals. And not only did they achieve that, this movement really accomplished something else that was important. It got government to commit to several things. One of it being that they were going to dedicate part of the country's income to the response and prevention of gender-based violence in South Africa. And it really was powerful because it showed what is possible when men and women band together and say, enough is enough.
Right. That is really powerful. Speaking about social movement, for me, the Not Too Young to Run campaign was definitely unexpected. I mean, it really surprised me to see the large number of some of my former classmates, you know, running for elected offices. Like, that was a big deal, you know, who knew? But other than that, it's just the same way I've seen some of you ladies, you know, running for offices in your respective countries, you know. I mean, I would be in awe. Or even in the U.S. Congress, as a matter of fact. But the most interesting thing about this campaign was the fact that it sparked a whole new movement, okay? It went so viral that the Office of the UN Secretary General got so inspired that it actually initiated this global campaign in partnership with the UNDP, the IPU, YAGA, and several other entities to drive this movement.
Yeah, definitely when it comes to young people rising up on the continent, it's really inspiring to see. I mean, you see the continent has several young people actually right now that are actually doing some great things in terms of shaking up the political scene, the economic scene. In South Africa, we have Julius Malema, who's really with the EFF. I mean, he's the only one right now who's trying to really stir up the young people, the consciousness of the young people when it comes to economics of the country. You have Kemi Seba in the Francophone Africa, where he's trying to, you know, see how the currency can be dropped, that the franc CFA currency can be, you know, eliminated because, you know, it's really like to him being manipulated from the European countries. And you also have Bobby Wine in Uganda. Bobby Wine, as you know, if his momentum of really trying to change the political climate in Uganda really sticks, I mean, some people say it might be the beginning of the end of the reign of one of the strong men of East Africa, Yoweri Museveni.
That's right.
Well, still ahead here on Our Voices, we'll bring you our picks for 2018's most fascinating African women and men. Back in a moment.
This is a country that I chose to become a citizen. I didn't have to become a citizen. I chose to become a citizen.
I feel like America gave me an opportunity to pursue my passion as an artist.
I really believe that clean eating is a way to a more successful life or a happier life, if you want to put it that way.
One of the things that helps me wake up every morning is doing better, being better.
We grew up poor, and so I'm always focused on helping the working class be able to have a more comfortable lifestyle.
I'm passionate about doing justice every day. I oftentimes say that justice is a verb, not a noun. You know, I believe in action and moving the ball forward.
Welcome back to Our Voices. It's time for our Women to Watch segment, which highlights people in Africa and the diaspora who are doing extraordinary things.
I'm going to break the rules this week and feature a man during this segment. We spoke earlier about Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and how he has really ushered in a new era in Ethiopia. He's done a lot these past few months, but what really stands out to me is his decision to appoint women to half of Ethiopia's ministerial posts, including the defense minister. This is the type of radical change that is needed across Africa to create gender equality and women's empowerment. In his address to Parliament explaining the move, he said that women would help restore peace and stability. So there's a lot to keep an eye on.
I'm breaking the rules too today, Ayan. My man to watch is Dr. Dennis Mukwege, known to many as Dr. Miracle. He was relatively unknown until winning a Nobel Peace Prize for his work treating more than 85,000 women, girls, even babies raped and suffering from violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo. When accepting his Nobel Peace Prize, he spoke to survivors saying, "The world is listening to you and refusing to remain indifferent. We hope that the world will not wait any longer to act with determination and strength to assist you because the survival of humanity depends on you."
This week, I'm watching Ilhan Omar. Her story really can be considered the American dream. She is a Somali refugee who spoke no English when she arrived in the U.S. at the age of 12. To see a war survivor make history threefold as the first hijabi in Congress, first Somali-American legislator, and the first African-Muslim woman in Congress was pretty exciting. Omar says, "I was raised to believe in the ideals of charity, building community, fighting against injustice, fighting to reach consensus. All those ideals are deeply rooted in my faith." She wants other marginalized young people, no matter what community they're from, anyone who's facing discrimination, hatred, or bullying because of their identity right now, to know that you don't need permission to be yourself.
And that's how you smash several glass ceilings all at once. You know, for me, it's got to be Rwanda's Diane Rwigara. You'll remember the young woman who tried to run for president but was barred from contesting the election. She and her mother were arrested and imprisoned on charges of inciting insurrection and forgery. Rwigara said the charges were politically motivated, and it seems the court agreed with her. In a surprise verdict, it found the two women innocent on all of the charges. We spoke to Rwigara earlier and asked her what her experience in 2018 means for women in politics.
It's not easy being a woman in African politics, but the key is to never give up, but keep going until you attain your goal. I live in a country that is very unpredictable, but I do hope that 2019 will be a good year I will continue with what I had started before I went to prison. I had founded a movement, the People's Salvation Movement, Itabaza, and I'm planning on continuing with it.
Diane Regara there. It will be interesting to see what she does next.
Who do you think deserves a shout out? Use the hashtag VOA Our Voices and tell us who you think is a woman to watch. It would be great to learn about the women you see rising.
Be sure to watch Our Voices on the website where you can find the world's top news stories.
You know, this year was also about the imagery, moments that for us just said it all. And so we wanted to share some of these very memorable images with you. For me, it was this moment. Families reuniting after decades of separation as the border between Ethiopia and Eritrea opened up. So often the world sees only the damage and destruction caused by conflict on our continent. But this, folks, is what peace looks like in Africa. It's about families, forgiveness, hope, and love.
Those images are priceless. You know, sometimes they bring tears to my eyes because they're very real. Here is my favorite picture of 2018 from the World Cup. The French football team that was almost all Africans.
Oh, yeah.
The Sons of Africa played very well. The French took the trophy home. So really, the immigration opponents of France can thank Africans for the millions of euros that they bring in every year.
Right.
Also from France, who can forget the moment where Mamadou Gassama, a Malian immigrant also known as Spider-Man, went from undocumented migrant to French citizen in a viral instant, from rescue a dangling baby from a balcony. There were lots of groups who criticized the French government for praising Mamadou on one hand, while pushing to deport others like him on the other. It left people wondering, do you have to perform a heroic act to get granted citizenship?
Apparently you do.
Yeah,
Yes,
I think I watched that video about 10 times. It was incredible what he did. The Nigerian women's bobsled team made history by becoming the first Olympic bobsled team to represent an African nation. Not the first African women's team, the first African team ever to go to the Olympic bobsled competition. These pictures of them evoke such a strong sense of pride. And get this, the three of them started bobsledding just 15 months before their Olympic debut. Can you believe that?
That was awesome.
And here's to more African women making history in the year ahead. On behalf of the Voice of America and all of us here at Our Voices, we wish you a very happy new year. See you in 2019.
And for those of us who loved Black Panther, Wakanda forever.